Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Church and State. My name is Timothy Johnson, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about the importance of your local governments and being involved in the fight to save and preserve liberty for the next generation. Let's get right into this. Why the local fights? What's so important about your local government? Most of us are concerned about national news, about what's happening in the federal government and what's happening worldwide. But I guarantee you, most of us do not know the names of our city council members or the names of our school board members. Now, why is that significant? Well, let's look back on this last 2 years. Let's look at some different cities in the local governments, for example. Look at how Los Angeles has handled COVID. Los Angeles, New York, they have handled COVID. You could compare them to Nazi Germany. If you don't have your papers, right? Show me your papers. I'll buy them. You're not able to go to eat. You get arrested if you're a 9-year-old going to the museum because you don't have a mask and you don't have a Vaxport. Then, for example, you can look at other cities that are mostly small that are run by conservatives. And in those cities, they don't have any vaccine passports. In fact, they don't even have any mask mandates. It's a very interesting government. And this is something that is directly related to who votes for these people. Think about it. If the right people are in charge, there's no vaccine mandate and there's no mask mandates for these cities. However, if you have the other people in charge, there's vaccine mandates, mask mandates, and all this other stuff that goes with that. The fight to preserve liberty for the next generation begins in your local government. One of the most encouraging points for me that people are rejecting cynicism and becoming more engaged in their local governments is that the conversation here in America is turning a lot more from federal to local. It's from national to what's happening in my city. That shows that, one, people are rejecting cynicism and complaining about Brandon all day, and they're getting involved in what can I do for change? What can I do to impact to make sure my kid is going to be safe when he goes to school so that he doesn't learn about sex education when he's 5 years old, or learned about gender transitions, or mask mandates for kids. And so parents all over America are rising up, demanding from their school boards accountability, but also liberty. And in fact, this is what George Washington tells us. George Washington, in his farewell address, says this about preserving liberty. He says, "It is a fire not to be quenched. It demands a uniform vigilance to prevent its bursting into a flame, lest instead of warming, it should consume." In other words, he's saying that local governments, our governments, they should be a flame, and that flame should give warmth. As soon as it starts bursting into a flame and consuming, we haven't done our job. And this is exactly why it's important to be involved on the local and state level. I'll give you another example, a little more close to home. In Fontana, one of the cities close by me, the mayor there hosted Gavin Newsom just recently. Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, unfortunately, and he unveiled his smarter plan to end the pandemic in California, which is interesting because most states are doing fine with no mandates. She says that Fontana is leading the state to end the pandemic. Imagine if we had a mayor who had maybe a little bit more of a backbone, who had a little more discernment and said, no, there should be no mandates whatsoever, and said no to Gavin Newsom. That would be amazing. Instead, in this case, she's kissing up to him. Oh, hey, real quick, if you would like to support this content, the videos that we do, the articles, and the website, everything that we're doing with Red Liberty Media, help us grow. Become a Patreon subscriber today. The link right here will help you do that. Just click that, and it'll also be in the description box below this video. Anyways, back to our scheduled program. And just to give you a little more context too about why local governments are so important and why we're talking about this today, I recently went to the Fontana School Board meeting because I saw on Instagram Fontana Unified School District actually kicked out parents and had the Fontana Unified Police Department escort parents out because they weren't wearing their masks. That's unacceptable. And so I showed up with the school board meeting with San Bernardino County Patriots, and there were about 40 of us, and we all walked in with masks, and then we took them off because we said if they're going to take us all out, they're going to have to, get us all out at the same time, and it's going to look really bad for them. Fontana School Board is doing some rotten things with mask mandates and along with kind of redistricting to gerrymander to make sure they get re-election. And so I actually was able to speak at the school board meeting, and I want to share some clips with you here. My name is Timothy Johnson. This is my first time speaking at a school board, so thank you for hearing me. It's been a pleasure. It's been kind of fun, actually, being involved in politics, if you will, and being an engaged citizenry. The local level is the most important battles. And so thank you all for your service. In response to this right here, I just want to give some encouragement. When our founders were trying to put together our Constitution, they were deadlocked for a lot of weeks, and they could not figure out how to come in agreement. And it wasn't until Benjamin Franklin said, "Sir, how is it that every day during the American Revolution, we sought the hand of heaven for wisdom and for guidance, and our prayers were answered time after time. But how has it been that this time, trying to make this Constitution, that we have not once sought his aid? And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, how can a nation rise without his aid? Because it is written in the Holy Scriptures, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain." And from that moment forward, every single time they gathered, they had prayer and sought God for guidance and wisdom, because they understood that man's wisdom, according to the book of James, is earthly, demonic, and selfish. But God's wisdom is pure, peaceable, and sensible. And his wisdom is built on eternal truths that do not change. There is a God in heaven who presides over the destinies of nations, and the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord directs his footsteps. And so I tell that to say, if our founders thought it was so important to pray and to seek the Lord in prayer in their individual lives and also together, have each one of you prayed and sought God and asked him, just like Solomon, "Lord, give me wisdom when it comes to this," to asking God, "How should I vote when it comes to this districting campaign?" It seems to me that God would not have you vote in a way that divides by race. Race means absolutely nothing, especially here in America. Character is what matters. And telling me or anybody else, because I'm this race, that I'm going to vote this way is an insult to my intelligence. And it's an insult to all the constituents as well. They're basically saying they don't have a brain, they don't have any critical thinking, and that's not what we are as Americans. And so I would ask you, and I would encourage you, as you go home tonight and before the next meeting, ask God to really show you what to do. Ask him for wisdom. Read in the scriptures. If it was good enough for our founders, it's good enough for us. God bless you all. Thank you for your service, and thank you for hearing me. I'm a Christian, and there's a verse in the Bible that Jesus says to his disciples in Matthew 10 where he says, "When you stand before kings and leaders, do not worry about what you are to say, for it will be given to you in that moment what you are to say, for it is not you who speak, but your heavenly Father." Before I got up to speak about this ungodly gerrymandering, God gave me the right words to say, the right way to say it in a respectful but very convicting manner for the school board members. I tell you, it was so much fun. It was fun being engaged in the school board about what's going on. It was a light bulb moment for me because I'm like, this is where the fight for liberty is. This impacts so many kids, so many families. And if we're not engaged in that, if we just have apathy all day long, who's going to stop these tyrants from doing whatever they want? Tell you one thing, folks, there's no plan B. We're the main plan. If the liberty stops with this generation, it's not going to be there for the next generation. I'm planning on starting a family very soon, and I want to make sure that my kids are going to have that liberty. And so that's why it's important for all of us to be engaged, to one, be submitted to the governor of the universe, and then we can be a citizen of the United States properly. We need to have these eternal truths and timeless wisdom that our founders had so that we can know what is true and what is evil and what is almost true. So as you engage in the local school boards, first step, give you some action steps. Get to know your school board members. Get to know your city council by name. Know who they are. Look at their voting record. Do they support mask mandates? Do they support vaccine mandates? And then they usually happen once every 2 weeks. Go to their meeting. And if you see something you don't like, speak up in a respectful way. Remember, people aren't the enemy. They're the opportunity. And with that, I will leave you. God bless you. This has been Church and State, where we keep the state out of the church, but not the church out of the state. I'm Timothy Johnson for Red Liberty Media.